Imagine you're standing in the heart of Paris. You hear the clinking of wine glasses on a terrace, see the lights of the Eiffel Tower, and catch the scent of fresh pastry in the air. In this moment, it feels like you're in the safest, wealthiest place on earth. But it's the greatest illusion of the modern age. Today's France resembles an old aristocrat living in a family chateau, secretly burning the floorboards for heat because he can't afford coal. We're used to thinking of France as a leader of Europe, a nuclear power, the cradle of luxury. But if you scrape off that thin layer of gold leaf, you'll find a country in a state of long-term, polite bankruptcy. This isn't the kind of crisis where everything collapses overnight. It's a decay that has been rotting for decades. Why should you care, even if you've never been to Paris? Because France is a laboratory. It shows us exactly what happens to a wealthy Western democracy when it decides it can live forever on a credit card charged to its own future. Let's look into the wallet of an average French citizen. There's a word you need to know, SMIC. It's the acronym for the national minimum wage, and today, the entire life of the nation revolves around it. Meet Julien. Julien did everything right. He spent 5 years grinding through textbooks, passed brutal exams for an elite Grande École, got his engineering degree, and now works in Lyon. He manages a team, takes on massive responsibility, and stays late at the office. His take-home pay: about $2,300, €2,100. Now look at his neighbor, Mark. Mark dropped out of school and works 35 hours a week, strictly by the book, as a supermarket cashier. He earns that SMIC, about $1,550, €1,440. Julien studied for 5 years and carries the stress of a manager, yet he earns only $750 more than someone with zero qualifications. In the US or China, that gap would be 5 to 10 times larger. In France, the floor and the ceiling of salaries have moved so close together that there's no room to breathe. This is Smicardization, the transformation of an entire country into a massive block of people living on the minimum wage. Why? Because taxes on labor are so high that companies physically cannot afford to give raises to skilled staff. When the government raises the minimum wage to keep up with inflation, the floor moves up, but the ceiling stays put. Ambition dies. Why hustle for more when your extra effort is worth the price of just 3 or 4 dinners at a restaurant? If you drive 2 hours north of Paris, the Instagram filter evaporates. You enter the French Rust Belt, filled with the skeletons of factories that once forged the country's greatness. 40 years ago, the Parisian elites decided that industry was dirty and old-fashioned. They had a plan: France would become a nation of services, tourism, and design. We'd sell $3,000 handbags to wealthy Americans and pour wine for Chinese tourists. They turned the country into a museum. The problem? You can't maintain a nuclear superpower on tips from waiters and tour guides. Today, manufacturing is a measly 10% of France's GDP. For comparison, boring Germany is nearly double that. When you close a factory, you don't just kill a workshop, you kill the town around it. The butcher shop closes, the only dentist leaves, the schools go empty. During the pandemic, France realized with horror that the country which gave the world Louis Pasteur couldn't even produce basic Tylenol. We had to beg India and China for painkillers. That is the price of a post-industrial paradise. When you stop making things with your hands, you lose your right to sovereignty. Now, let's talk about money that doesn't exist. France's national debt is $3.3 trillion, 3 trillion euros. That's 113% of everything the country produces in a year. To understand the scale of the disaster, France hasn't passed a balanced budget since 1974. 50 years. Generations of politicians, left, right, and center, have done the exact same thing: they bought social peace with money the state didn't have. France spends nearly 34% of its GDP on social programs, the highest in the world. Free healthcare, subsidies, pensions, grants. Sounds great, right? But there's a catch. It's like living on credit. You drive a Rolls-Royce and eat at the best restaurants, but your actual salary only covers the gas. Everything else is debt. In 2024, the moment of truth arrived. Interest payments on the debt became one of the largest items in the budget. France now spends more on paying back interest than it does on educating its children. We are literally eating the future of the next generation just to buy one more day of quiet. If France is a world champion at anything, it's the ability to take money away from its citizens. Imagine a company is willing to budget $65,000 a year for your position. That's the total cost to the employer. You think, wow, I'm rich. Not so fast. First, the state takes the employer contributions. You're down to $46,000. Then, they deduct your personal social security and pension contributions. You're down to $36,000. But wait. Now it's time for income tax. By the time you go to the store to buy bread, nearly 50% of what you earn through your brains or your hands has vanished into the state's coffers. France is a country where success is viewed with suspicion. There is a cultural allergy to wealth. You can be a genius, but the system will do everything in its power to make sure you stay, just like everyone else. You probably saw the news in 2023, Paris in flames, mountains of trash on the streets, riot police in tear gas. The world watched and wondered, do the French hate working so much that they'll burn their city down over raising the retirement age from 62 to 64? But behind that riot lies a bitter truth. The French pension system is a legal Ponzi scheme. People working today aren't saving for their own retirement, they are directly paying for their grandparents' vacations in Nice. In the 1960s, there were 4 workers for every 1 retiree. Today, it's 1.7 workers, and that number is crashing. The population is aging. There is no money left in the system. The only way to save it is to make people work longer or pay them less. But in France, mentioning reality is treated like a human rights violation. The country lives in a state of collective mathematical denial. The scariest thing for a country isn't debt or taxes. It's when the smartest people decide there is no future there. Walk into any major bank in London, a tech startup in Zurich, or a research center in California. You will hear French everywhere. Roughly 3 million French citizens live abroad. And these aren't just tourists. They are the cream of the crop, scientists, engineers, entrepreneurs. Why do they leave? The choice is simple. Option A, stay in Paris, earn $3,200, give half to the taxman, live in a tiny shoebox apartment, and wait 20 years for a promotion based on seniority. Option B, fly to the US or Switzerland, earn triple the salary, pay lower taxes, and build a career based on talent rather than who you know. France pays for the expensive education of its geniuses and then gifts them to the economies of other countries. We export intelligence and import social problems. It's a recipe for catastrophe. In the past, the French citizen told the state, okay, take half my money, but give me world-class service. And it worked. The trains were lightning fast, doctors saw you instantly, and schools were elite. Today, that contract has been unilaterally cancelled. Try going to an ER today, you might wait 15 hours. Rural France is full of medical deserts, places where there isn't a single doctor for 100 miles. Education standards are plummeting, and teachers are demoralized and underpaid. People are still paying luxury tax prices but receiving budget brand service. This creates a deep-seated rage. When you see your money disappear while everything around you breaks, you stop believing in the system. You start looking for someone to blame. There is a strange fact, according to global polls, the French are the most pessimistic people on the planet. They often view the future with more fear than people living in actual war zones. Why is a country with 5 weeks of paid vacation and the world's best cheese so miserable? It's the gap between the myth and the reality. The French are raised to believe they are the center of civilization, Napoleon, the Enlightenment, human rights. But when they open the window, they see their country shrinking. They see their language replaced by English in business, their companies losing to American tech giants, and their cities losing their identity. It's the state of the fading aristocrat. He's still wearing his velvet coat, but his underwear is full of holes, and the castle is freezing. France isn't just a beautiful country with economic hiccups. It's a warning. It is a living example of what happens when excellence is replaced by forced sameness, Smicardization. Real production is traded for a pretty picture for tourists. Debt becomes the only way to maintain a lifestyle you can't afford. France hasn't collapsed yet. There is still life there, in Parisian startups, in the stubbornness of its farmers, in the talent of the engineers who haven't left yet. But math is relentless. You cannot pay for a Rolls-Royce with the spare change in your pocket forever. When you look at France, don't look at the Louis Vuitton bags. Look at the balance sheet. And if you see your own country starting to make the same mistakes, drugging the public with subsidies, suffocating business with taxes, and praying for infinite credit, know this: you are already part of the same story. France isn't an anomaly. It is the future of anyone who decides to stop building and start simply consuming what their ancestors left behind. The only question left is, when it's time to settle the bill, will you have anything in your pocket besides an old postcard of a tower?